Hello, everyone. Welcome to this series of PMI exam preparation session. Thanks for taking out time and being with us today. My name is Deb, and I will be hosting this call along with Amrali. Before we get started, I request everyone to keep yourself muted. For questions, please put it in the session chat and Amrali will try to answer them, or otherwise you can unmute yourself at the very end. We can have an interactive direct question answer kind of interaction. And we are recording this session for the benefit of all others who could not join us today. And this session is actually, we will go through the key highlights for one of the enablers, which is manage conflict under the people domain. And like as always, we will also try to cover few of the mock questions which are related to this particular topic. And we will also discuss strategies on how we are attempting such questions. And I request you all to please subscribe to our channel. We keep uploading new videos throughout the week. So related to the tips, pointers, strategies, anything related to the preparation that will really help you. You will get notifications once you get subscribed. So please do subscribe to this YouTube channel once we upload the video, as well as you can find other videos as well. A quick disclaimer, this session is aimed at as a quick revision. Like as you can see, it is a quick refresher with the key highlight points, with key pointers for your exam preparation. And most of the, like we can assure you, like most of your exam questions will be based on these concepts. But again, like it is like as it is always necessary for any kind of concept building, you should go through the reference books and guides for your concept building. So use these notes only to supplement your preparation and not to avoid your preparation, your studies basically. You can take it as a like a one day before your exam for to quickly go through the key topics while you are preparing your exam. Well, from our last session, if you, those who have already attended, from our last session, like just to get everyone up to the speed, we looked at different tasks, how these tasks they are aligned, and we looked into how they are actually mapped to the knowledge areas of PM Book 6 edition. And in case if you have, in case you missed our previous session, I would really suggest you to check our recordings, which are available in the YouTube channel. And today we will be discussing more specifically about the first task, which is the manage conflict under the people domain. So it has three categories in itself: interpret the source, analyze the context, and resolve the conflict. We will be looking into each of these subtopics of managed conflict in more detail in upcoming slides. So to start with, like as you like when you are as a project manager come across any conflict, you need to understand the source of that conflict. You need to understand the nature and the criticality of the conflict. So the ability to identify a conflict will actually help you to determine the corrective action, help you to understand which resolution technique you should be using to get that perfect resolution of that conflict, right? So in a project environment, there are many sources for a conflict to occur. Most of them are highlighted over here, something like related to the schedule conflict or priorities or resource availability. And if you notice, like all these sources are actually interrelated to each other. For example, like the schedule conflict that can be related to the resource or the project priority, right? So for example, like you as a manager, during your planning stage, you created your project schedule and the resource calendar. And per your resource calendar, you know that, okay, the third week of March, you need certain equipment to be onboarded, or a particular person needs to be onboarded with a specific skill set. And for some reason, that there is a breakdown of the machine and it is no longer available, or the person is not released from other project or the previous project, so you are in conflict, you need to get that resolved. So you need to probably think of some mitigation plan, like the negotiating with the other project manager to get timely to get on timely onboarding of that person, or you may need to raise a CR request if it is really impacting your schedule. So ideally, I would say in a nutshell, just to like, you need to interpret and you need to be understanding the conflict in order to recommend the corrective actions. Similarly, we have other sources as well, like it can be due to the different personalities of the team member, or differences in opinion, or even the cultural related differences as well, which are actually documented in enterprise environmental factors. You can refer to those documents when you are actually working in a project to understand what can be the cultural differences which can impact or which can create conflict between different regions, different people, different personalities and all. So as a project manager, you should be aware where all these conflicts can come in. And once you have an understanding of those conflicts, you can effectively analyze and implement the techniques how to resolve it. In general, I would say like most of my experience of the project management and all, like even you guys also may agree, most of the like top three sources actually account for most of the 50% of the conflict in the project. And having said that, again, it is more about like when there is a conflict, we get into, we need to understand, obviously when there is a people, there will be a conflict. Obviously when we start building a team, when we are onboarding people into the team, we there is a high possibility that there will be conflict within the team, and we need to understand how those conflicts can actually mature as when we are trying to build a team actually. So just for example, like there are different models. One of them is the Tuckman ladder model, wherein which actually describes the different stages of team development. It starts with forming, then followed with storming and norming, which is followed with the performing, which is the most efficient stage of team performance. And once the project is complete, the team is adjourned. So most of the questions are related to the first four stages, and they will be giving you some scenarios around each of these. So ideally, the suggestion is you should be understanding the concept when actually the team is performing, what are the drawbacks, what are the benefits of it, what actually are the actions which are done in each of them. And I have just tried to highlight few key pointers for each of these stages. So the key takeaway over here is like the storming is like storming relates to the differences of opinion when people are actually getting, like they got onboarded, and then there are obviously, because people don't understand each other, there will be differences. And norming is more about adjusting to others opinion. If you remember this 2 3 key points, then definitely it will help you to answer most of the questions around the Tuckman ladder. Now coming to different levels. So as you may understand, like obviously the conflicts, if not addressed, it can certainly build upon time, right, within the team itself. So over here, it is like they have different levels. So the conflict can start at a level one when you like when you as a project manager or the team has identified a problem and they are ready to solve it, which is actually referring to the level one. And for such level, the successful action is like the team is collaborating with each other, they are working together to actually solve the problem. So that's the level one. And while solving the problem, there can be generic disagreement, and this is actually identified as a level two. And for such a situation, a good response or the action would be to empower the team to resolve the problem themselves without you as a project manager getting involved. And obviously, if the disagreement goes to the level 3, which is a contest, wherein like for it is easy for a particular just for example, where you may need to negotiate or accommodate. So that kind of action item, you as a project manager, depending upon which level or which kind of at which stage of the conflict you are facing, you can apply the appropriate action to get those conflict resolved. So again, this in the agile world, again, this is more from the agile world, wherein the sprint are of 2 weeks or 1 month kind of thing, and obviously you may need to resolve the conflicts as soon as possible. You don't want the conflict to go to the level 5, which is wherein it is the least performing stage for the team. It is the worst detrimental phase. You don't want that to be escalated to that high level. You'd always want to bring it back to the level 1, where the team are collaborating, are solving the problem with each other, and are talking to each other. So from the exam perspective, again, you should be understanding what are the different levels and what kind of actions are required, what are the identifiers, how to identify which level we as a team are performing, and accordingly those answers you can definitely attempt it. And you can, so again, over here we have just tried to highlight what are the different key pointers for each of the level. We will be talking about the conflict techniques. So just for example, in level 1, collaboration is the technique, right, to encourage the team to go for in this disagreement or in contest, where we can, like, there are different techniques we will be talking about in more detail in upcoming slide. But yes, I would suggest to relate that with this level of conflict to understand how, which technique to be applied at which level, which can be helpful for the resolution, for the effective resolution. Now that we understand the source and the stage of the conflict, we now need to put that conflict in the correct perspective. We need to, before we decide the resolution technique, we need to understand, we need to we need to gather the information about the conflict itself. We need to understand and analyze the conflict, right? So for this purpose, there are guidelines in, like, as a project manager, you should focus on the project goals, or you should consider the environmental factors, right? Because if it is a cultural difference, then you should be understanding the EEFs of the project. You should encourage the team for better collaboration. So these are different guidelines. Many a times project manager can influence the team for a desired goal or an objective. So again, project manager can use, these are different kind of tools and techniques that project manager can use to understand, to gather the information, and to analyze the conflict itself. The project manager can be involved through effective listening as well as active listening. There is a very thin line difference between effective listening and active listening. The effective listening is more about attempting to understand the perspective of the speaker. This requires sometimes the knowledge of the topic. So basically, the project manager should be doing some kind of groundwork before talking to the speaker who is facing the conflict, and then trying to understand and help from his perspective. Effective listening occurs when the listener actually attempts to clearly understand as clear as possible. So when the speaker is giving some information about the topic, the listener is making notes or is trying to ensure that he is interpreting the speaker correctly. So there is a thin line of difference between each of this. But yes, overall, as a project manager can use all these different tools and techniques, while to come to a proper conclusion about the conflict, to understand the conflict, where it is coming from. now that we are analyzing the conflict can arise at two different processes. One is during the resource assignment, or acquiring the resource, and the other one is the while doing the procurement with the vendors. So as you know, like the resource can be like physical resource as well as the people, the human resource, right? So the best way to handle the conflict in with the resources with like people or with physical resource is using the interpersonal skills, like negotiating with them or trying to collaborate with them or doing the problem solving as a team to come to a proper conclusion. And while procurement, because it deals with the vendor, uh, like it can arise due to the unclear statement of work or contact terms. So like with the vendor, the best way to resolve a conflict is again to negotiate with them or to uh, hold pre-bid conferences or early discussions for questions and clarifications. So again, in a nutshell, collaboration, problem solving, negotiation are the best ways to resolve any kind of conflict. And we will be looking at, so over here, we now that we understand the source as well as we have gathered the information about the conflict, now we will be talking more about what are the different techniques to resolve a conflict. So conflict management, like it is part of the managed team. Obviously, when we are managing a team, we will be coming across different conflicts. So one of the option that you have is to avoid or withdraw. This technique is beneficial when the stakes are low, or if the individuals who are involved in that conflict are not the major stakeholder. So as a project manager, you may find that the issue does not serve the purpose of invested time, or instead that time can be can be invested in other productive activities. Or if you think that the individuals are they need more time to cool off, so you may decide that okay, it's better to withdraw yourself and give them some time, and instead of pushing for immediate resolution. So in such scenario, avoid or withdraw is more applicable. But again, the disadvantage of this technique is like the team members may think that you are lacking skills, or they may assume that you are having an unfair bias. So there is some disadvantage to the trust kind of thing. But yes, many a times as a project manager, you may need to decide that okay, it's better to avoid instead of pushing for some immediate resolution. Next comes the compromise or reconcile, where you take the suggestions from both the sides which are involved in conflict and try to partially satisfy both the parties. It's more like a give and take kind of thing. So this technique is useful when the stakeholders are having equal powers. You don't want to dissatisfy one party over the other, right? So the concern, but again, there is a concern with this technique as well, wherein uh, even if the parties are content, but this doesn't generate the trust in the long run. Obviously, one party is giving away something to get benefited. So this approach, this technique also doesn't fulfill or doesn't bring satisfaction to for a long run, on a long term perspective. Next is the smooth or accommodate, wherein you give more consideration to one party over the other. This technique is this can be useful if it is a smaller conflict, like which involves less influential stakeholders. But again, this also has some drawback, wherein you fail to bring a balanced approach for the parties which are involved. Next is the force or direct, wherein you as a project manager, you agree to one party's viewpoint, or you try to enforce one particular decision over the group itself. This is also required many a times, wherein you can think that okay, if you need to override, it is for the betterment of the project goal, project end objective, right? So many a times you may need to force your decision when you see that there is no proper conclusion which is coming up. Whereas like it can be an urgent situation, you need to get this thing rolling, some deliverable rolling, and you need to immediately implement your decision without taking too much of time from digging deep into each of the conflict resolution. Last but not the least is the collaborative way of resolving a conflict. In this, you discuss the issue with all the parties to agree to a solution. And obviously, you come up with different viewpoints, you consider those, and then having an open dialogue and working towards the solution itself. So these are overall different techniques which are used, and most of the questions are again they will give you different scenarios, and they may ask you that which kind of technique you maybe like is more appropriate, or you as a project manager should be doing in such a scenario. Uh, this is something what we just discussed, just plotting it in X and Y axis with varying level of comfort and the concern from the project manager perspective as well as from the team perspective. Over here, again, the key takeaway is like the using of force is the worst technique, and collaboration is the best approach to resolve a conflict when you are trying to come to a proper conclusion when you are working in a team. Now, over here, I will just try to touch upon this topic wherein like there is also the well-established theory that from the exam perspective, I would just like you to remember it is by Douglas McGregor, where he actually defined theory X, Y, and Z based on people's behavior. And you as a project manager, you use those appropriate theories to appropriate conflict management technique, basically. So theory X is assumes that the people dislike work, and they need to be forced or controlled or directed towards the organizational goal. Theory Y emphasizes on people's, like it assumes that people have intrinsic interest towards work. They're like obviously with people, there are different behaviors come into play, right? In a team, not everyone is all equal. So there will be some people who need to be managed, who need to be controlled, which is theory X. There will be some people who are actually self-directed, who want to seek responsibility, who have positive attitude, that represents Y. And the theory Z is something from the organizational perspective or from the managerial perspective, where you are trying to increase the employee loyalty. So these are different theories which have been presented and which are useful from the project managerial perspective, and also based on the people's behavior, you can decide what kind of conflict resolution technique that you can implement. But again, this is like for any detailed information about all this, you can refer to different blogs and references. There are many theories which are available over the internet, but from the PMP exam perspective, it is good enough to understand which theory relates to which kind of behavior of a person, and that should be good enough for the exam. So in the beginning, we understood that like in a real project, a conflict can come from anything, right? It is not really limited to the people. We have been till now we have been focusing only on the from the people perspective, like within a team, how do we resolve a conflict? But again, conflict can come from the schedule perspective as well. There it can impact the schedule as well. So here is just a very quick overview regarding the terms, the key terms when from the project schedule perspective, what kind of conflict management techniques or how you should be addressing those to resolve the conflict. But again, we will be covering each of this in more detail in our next video, which will be publishing shortly. So again, the request is to subscribe to our channel so that you guys get the timely notification of that as well. So with this, we will be actually moving on to the mock questions. I will just wait for 1 minute for you guys to read and attempt the question, and then we can quickly move on to the answers and the strategies of that question attempt. I hope you all have been able to attempt it. So over here, again, the as a project manager, you should always be aware about the level of influence or the interest of the stakeholder, right? Then only, just for example, there are different techniques wherein win and loss or win-win kind of situation or loss-loss kind of situation when you are implementing any kind of resolution. So based on the stakeholders' influence or how critical that stakeholder is, uh, you will be able to implement that kind of resolution itself. So the answer over here is A, wherein like you need to identify and analyze the level of influence and interest of each stakeholder and address their concerns. Moving to the next question. So the answer over here is forming, the option D. As you may recollect, forming is the first phase wherein the team members are knowing each other, they are learning from each other about the process. So answer is D over here. Moving to the next question. So as you may recollect from our previous slide, right? The over here the key term is no one gets everything and no one loses completely. So again, it's more related to the compromise technique where the decision is not ideal for either party, but it is acceptable for both the parties, right? It's a kind of a temporary relief. So that's the compromise strategy. Moving to the next question. So over here, it is like if you go through that question itself, like it is in the level 4, which is Crusade, wherein the language becomes political and polarizing. Over here, like the keywords are, they are not wrong. And like this kind of language actually refers to the level 4. And over here the answer is Crusade. So again, the key takeaway is you should be understanding which level, how to identify the levels of each of the conflict and what are the appropriate resolution for at each level. That is the key takeaway that will help you to answer this kind of questions. Moving to the next question. So this can be a tricky question. Primarily, like I would say, the keyword over here is they are asking about the level of conflict rather than the stage of the team development. So if you apply the elimination approach over here based on this question itself, you will be able to identify, like most of the answers are related to they represent the stage of a team or extreme level of the conflict. So again, the like by elimination process we can easily come to the conclusion that this is the problem to solve level of conflict, which is the level 1, and that's the correct answer over here. In this question, the keyword is actually the unilateral decision, wherein the project manager makes the uh, unilateral decision to run the activities, right? So this is nothing but a force or a direct kind of thing where project manager is imposing his decision over the team to get the project objective to reach to the project goal. So the answer over here is C, the force or direct. With this, we come to an end of today's session. I hope it was a bit interesting and helpful for you to at least understand what are the key topics that you should be focusing on when around this enabler or around this task itself, the manage conflict. And again, just to repeat, like I request you all to do subscribe to our channel, and we definitely look forward to your comments and feedback in the YouTube channel itself or over here. And with this, I will stop the recording for the session, and we can have a quick open interaction.